Yeah. Do you see a lot of data literacy being taken seriously in organizations? Do leaders realize the importance of that?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to be cynical about it. I've taught data a lot, both at Udacity and in person classes um, here in San Francisco. I taught a data analytics course through General Assembly one time where everybody in the class worked at a tech company. Google, Crunchbase, all companies you've heard of. Everyone struggled with learning the basics of data. It's not like a lot of the basics are not as intuitive as we'd like them to be. Every Pretty much every company I've ever been at, there's been a moment where somebody from the data team says, "Hey, I'm going to put on a 2 week thing about SQL and how to look at our data." um, Everyone feels this pain, and maybe people over assume that it's going to be easy to just kind of get everybody tuned up. But you're teaching people things that are non-intuitive, and in some cases are quite counterintuitive to them, especially in the face of the various cognitive biases that make interpreting data difficult. Um, so I think everybody wants to do it. I think everybody realizes it needs to be done. I'm not convinced everybody realizes how hard it really is, and and then also setting the expectations perhaps a little lower in that um, we are like people are have cognitive biases built in every single person that make interpreting data difficult. And so you're not going to eliminate the cognitive bias. You can bring awareness. People can get, more adept at incorporating it, but you're not getting rid of it because that's pretty hard coded in your brain. So you need to think about ways to kind of accommodate it or work around it. Different fields have come up with different approaches. So, like in academics, you have peer review.
Yeah.
So, someone else checking your work. That's kind of a common way
Even
to
though it's
just
broken. Yeah.
and,
It's
that, and
not
that's
doesn't
broken.
yeah, it doesn't really work well.
You
The
have
incentives, right, are not there. People are just, it's something, it's a tax on their time. They do it on Saturday and Sunday instead of playing with their kids. So they're like, yeah, yeah, good, 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 good. And then the mess, half of the scientific papers actually turns out recent studies. I don't know if it was in physics or more broadly in science, but there's an insane amount of papers that have been put out with false claims or mistakes or inadvertently. But yeah,
no. I mean, it's actually like a huge problem, right? You know, I don't want to get too philosophical,
I like
but
philosophy. Go for it.
but like I think the core problem is around epistemology, which that word basically means how do you learn something or how do you create knowledge? Like, what is your method for creating knowledge? So you have like the scientific method is a way to create knowledge. Um, and inside of companies, you need to develop this skill. And again, you have all of these cognitive biases that are fighting you at every turn. And so again, some people, again, you have kind of the peer review method. Somebody's checking you. In the business world, this or in government, this often looks like an audit. Getting a very separate third party to evaluate it. Some people try to avoid typical mistakes in business with things like insurance, which basically like prevent you from taking certain types of actions
Yeah.
as a way to avoid it. But I think the way that you ultimately win this is with culture
Yeah.
and establishing norms about not being absolutely certain, thinking in probabilities,
Very scientific.
Being skeptical, scientific, like the scientific method is held out because it's one of the best ways we've come up with to build knowledge.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think more companies should reflect on what is our epistemology, and how are our biases potentially thwarting that.
There's a story I shared on the podcast by Alexander Schacht, the effective statistician, and it's a personal story. Speaking of scientific thinking and being open to, uncertainty, I once reported to a CTO, and I was tasked to build an algorithm. I made some predictions. I went back and reported in stand up and I presented my results. And I said, well, that's what the algorithm predicted. And then there's an error bar around it. And so it's a plus or minus 15%. And he looked at me and said, there's an error? I said, yes, there is an uncertainty. So you're saying you're not sure. So I was like, okay, how do I go about explaining uncertainty here? It's not that I'm not sure. It's that there is an intrinsic thing in any estimation called uncertainty, and you can never be sure 100% of what you're saying. Yeah, but I just need an answer. Yeah, is it a yes or is it a no? Okay,
Right.
70% yes with with this confidence interval. Yeah.
Yeah, and not that everybody needs to become a statistician, but I think just getting comfortable with the fact that, as you just said, there are no certainties, and so you are making judgment calls,
Hmm.
and you can develop explicit frameworks or not,
Or go with your guts. Yeah.
or go with your gut, but ultimately all this decision making stuff, you're making judgments. um, Even like all the best ML AI models, they're making judgments. It's not it's not like for sure, because you can't process all of the data. Granted, we have access to a ton more data now than we used to, but I don't know if you're familiar with Bill Inman. Um, he's like the founder of, I think he created the term data warehouse, or he's like OG data dude. And I talked to him the other day, and he's totally focused on like unstructured textual data, and his point's like, we're only analyzing 10% of the data inside of organizations right now.
Yeah.
And so, like, the total amount of data you could be factoring in to make a decision is
It's at least 10 times.
infinite,
No.
or
Yeah.
and so you're always making decisions with constrained amounts of data, and at some point you have to kind of accept that and make judgments,
Yeah.
and then take responsibility and learn from those decisions, and build up um, your guts better. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Informed Company, how to build modern agile data stacks that drive winning insights. It's available on Amazon. I got my copy before the break and I really, really enjoyed it. So I recommend you to check it out.